Hey, it's Mo, your business development expert, author of the Snowball System, and host here at Real Relationships, Real Revenue. Well, we have an awesome episode for you today. And notice the sequence that we're following here. We talked with Kelly O'Hara, one of the top athletes on the planet, and applied her habits to business development. Then we talked with James Clear, habit expert, sold almost 2 million copies of his book, Atomic Habits, and an absolutely just fantastic person. And we applied his 4-law framework on habits to the top business development issues that require habits that we've learned in training over 15,000 experts all over the world. Then we went deep with one of the best client development practitioners I've personally ever worked with in working with over 400 clients around the world, 15,000 people that we've trained. And we talked to Mike Daimler of the Boston Consulting Group, who is absolutely amazing. And I just absolutely loved his commentary on how he thinks about clients adding value. Any client that works with Mike would be lucky to have him work with them on their account. And it was super insightful from our perspective to see how he thinks about client relationships, how he develops them, how he invests in them proactively, and how he helps his friends, his clients succeed. That was fun. So at this point, you might be thinking, man, I want to do all that stuff. I want to do all this, but I'm so busy. I have all these competing demands. I have all these things I'm asked to do that's not business development, client development, investing in relationships. How do I make the time? Well, that brings us to episode 7, where we talk to, I think, is the best expert on the planet for crafting a vision, developing plans to reach it, and saying no to things that aren't on that path. Michael Hyatt. Michael Hyatt is somebody I look up to as a mentor on this kind of thing. I hire him to help our organization, and it has been worth every penny. In this episode, Michael and I go back and forth, and we discuss 3 really big, meaty areas of content. Thing 1, we use his process to talk about how to craft a vision for your team, your part of an organization, to go after, to look to say that is the destination that we want to go to. Michael breaks it down for us in specific detail on how you do that. So we talk vision. The second thing we talk about is how do you set up systems annually, quarterly, monthly, weekly, daily, on how to keep track of your progress, on how to get there, how to keep focus, and specifically how to do those things very efficiently so you can maximize the amount of time you're doing the work and your team is doing the work, but you're all marching towards the same goal very efficiently and in lockstep. And the third thing that we cover today, which I'm most excited about because I probably get asked about this particular thing, this problem, more often than anything else I can think of. And it's how to say no to things so that you can free up time to go after that vision in a very organized fashion. Super cool content today. And we're applying it specifically to business development. How to craft a vision for you and your team, how to set up processes to get there, and how to say no to the stuff that's not as important as those things. Super cool. So that's our content for today. Don't forget 3 huge resources for you. 1, if you're a client-facing professional, think about going to bdhabits.com, B for business, D for development, bdhabits.com. It's going to give you a free series that we crafted that has tons of content about establishing the right BD habits for you to be successful. It works in lockstep with season 1 at Real Relationships, Real Revenue. If you lead teams or go-to-market initiatives, head over to bdhabitsforteams.com, for spelled F-O-R, bdhabitsforteams.com, and that'll give you a specific way of using the BD Habits framework to scale across the team. And one last resource. If you lead or are in charge of supporting enterprise-wide systems to focus on growth, Maybe you're a CMO, a CBDO, or you're a practice leader, a managing partner, CEO, chief revenue officer. If you're in any of those kind of roles where you're in charge of leading or supporting growth across your entire enterprise, check out winning-more.com. Winning-more.com. Put that dash in there because that will get you an instant download to over 40 pages that we've written of precisely how to get your entire organization on the same page to drive growth. So whether it's bdhabits.com, bdhabitsforteams.com, or winning-more.com, we've got you covered based on the goals and the roles that you've got in your organization. Check out those free resources and scale them across your whole company. They're free. Why wouldn't you do it? So without further ado, let's get into this amazing talk that I had with Michael Hyatt. I could not be happier with the way this turned out. Let's go. Michael, I'm so excited to have you on the show today. I just can't wait to dive into content. Our people need it. Thank you for attending.
Oh my gosh. Thank you for having me. I'm super excited about this. I've been looking forward to it all week.
Yeah, well, cool. Well, what's neat about this is I think in the season so far, our audience has heard Kelly O'Hara, one of the top athletes in the world, talk about her habits. They've heard James Clear talk about, author of Atomic Habits, talk about his model and how to really use habits to achieve more in life. They've heard Mike Daimler talk about being one of the top rainmakers in the world and how he keeps clients focused. And I think right now, what our audience could be thinking is, I want to do all that stuff, but I just don't have the time. And when I thought of somebody that can help us through that journey and give us models and frameworks and specific habits to build a system and a business around being really successful, I couldn't think of anybody better than you.
Well, I'm honored by that. And let's just hope that I deliver.
Well, good. Well, man, we're going to cover some awesome content today. I've gotten to, just to endorse you to our audience, I've gotten to be a part of something called Business Accelerator, which is where your folks teach your frameworks to people in sessions. And it's been phenomenally successful for Bundle Idea Group. And Darla, my COO, actually said, this is the number one investment you've ever made in me by being a part of Business Accelerator with me. And we've been working together almost a decade. So for her to say that means a lot. I feel the same way. And I've gotten to meet a lot of your top folks through mutual friends and being part of Business Accelerator, Courtney, Chad. You not only have great frameworks, but you practice what you preach. And I can say that I think your team is better run than any organization I've ever come across. So you got the frameworks.
Thank you.
And you do it. So we're going to have 3 awesome pieces of content today. Our audience already knows what that is, but I want them to get to know you. So I'm going to challenge you. Tell me a story of a time where you struggled, where you realized unless you built the right habits and frameworks and business building capability around you, things weren't going to turn out like you wanted. Drop us right into the pain of that struggle and tell us about you through that.
Yeah, so I spent almost my entire career in the traditional book publishing world. And in 1986, with a business partner, I decided to start my own book publishing company. We were full of enthusiasm. We were so excited. And we just had enormous drive and ambition. And we believed that we could put our company on the map. So we had some early success. We signed Orel Hershiser from the LA Dodgers after they won the World Series that year. And we had him write a book that ended up on the New York Times list for 7 months. That produced enormous cash flow, initial success out of the box, and brought to us, and this is the important part, a ton of opportunities. So before we knew it, we were not just publishing, books for adults, and in the book industry, that just is called trade books, but we also started publishing reference books and children's books and gift books. We even did a big Bible project, and there was nothing that we didn't want to pursue because the opportunities were coming to us like a waterfall. It was incredible.
This doesn't sound like a failure. Where's this headed?
Yeah, well, I'm setting up the failure because it was colossal. So 5 years later, we thought, actually about 4 years later, we thought, the only thing that we really need is more distribution because we had a small sales staff. And we said, if we could just partner with a big book publisher that already had distribution to all the outlets where we wanted our books, oh my gosh, we'd be on easy street. This would take us to the next level. So we signed a distribution agreement with an organization that said, we could double your sales at least. So our run rate at that point, right before we got into this relationship, we were doing about $400,000 a month in revenue. Frankly, it doesn't sound like that much looking back on it, but this was 1991. So it was a lot of money from our perspective. So the first month into the distribution relationship, we went from $400,000 a month in revenue to $40,000 in revenue. It was like catastrophic.
Oh, wow.
So we call the president of the distribution company and we say to him, we're trying not to panic, but man, we don't have that much of a cash reserve. What the heck happened? And he said, look, guys, I understand your concern. I appreciate it, but not to worry. It's just taken a little bit longer than we anticipated to ramp up. Next month will be a different story. Our guys are just getting familiar with your products and it'll be okay. Next month, about $45,000. Now we're starting to get panicked. So we call him up and we said, dude, it has not gotten better. And we're really concerned. We don't even have the cash to meet our expenses this month. And he said, look, I know. He said, it's going to get better, I promise. He said, but I'll tell you what we're going to do. We will loan you the money as an advance against sales. And this company happened to be owned by ABC Cap Cities. And so he kind of used them as an excuse. And he said, but New York wants us to kind of secure that sales advance with you guys with kind of the pledge of all your collateral. So we didn't really have much of a choice. We were like backed into a corner. So this went on until we were into them. This was after several months, like $1.2 million in sales advances. They never produced more than $60,000 a month.
Oh, no.
So in January of 1992, we got a call from the CEO of that company. And he said, and unbeknownst to him and unbeknownst to us, ABC Cap Cities had decided to sell that company. And they were cleaning up the balance sheet. So he said to us, he said, I don't know how to tell you guys this, but ABC Cap Cities wants their money back and you got 30 days to repay it, or we're going to shut you down and take possession of all your assets. So we went to our board. Our board said, hey, we're not putting any more money into this thing. We don't see a way out of this. You guys are hosed. They were a little bit nicer than that, but that was exactly the case. So 30 days later, an 18-wheeler, two of them, backed up to our office. Guys came in that we'd never met, never heard of, never knew. We let go all of our staff. They took every piece of furniture, every filing cabinet, every publishing contract, everything. My business partner, Robert, and I were sitting on the floor of what used to be his office with one piece of semi-furniture, which was a hardwired phone to the wall. And we were just sitting there going, what the heck just happened? This business that we loved, that we'd poured our lives into, that was really off to the races with that Oral Hershiser book, and everything was going great. All of a sudden, there we were. We were too broke to go bankrupt. I say go bankrupt because everybody understands that, but all our assets were pledged. So this distribution company picked them all up. There was nothing to distribute to our creditors. We were broker than broke.
Well, and I think of just the pain of going through that in like your universe of friends, the people these people you care about, your authors with book deals that aren't going to get fulfilled. Like it had to just feel awful to go through that.
I felt like such a failure and that I'd let so many people down. And I think the hardest part of all, I have 5 daughters. At that time, they were, all pretty little. And I remember 2 things. Our biggest creditor, the guy that we owed the most money to, came to my house and knocked on my door. And I was like, oh God, he was a guy here locally in Nashville where I live. And he handed me a check for $1,000. And he said, look, I know it's tough for you right now. And I just want to give you something to help. And that was it. Gave me a big hug. And that was it. Then the other thing that I remember is a couple from our church came with their SUV and they unloaded the whole back full of groceries. I mean, we had nothing.
So
and that was, yeah.
Well, I love that story because I think it just lets, a lot of times people can look at somebody like you and think, oh my gosh, he's got all these resources. Everything's going great. All these amazing #1 best-selling books, all these things. But I think a lot of times people don't hear the roots of folks. And I think hearing that is so powerful. So how did you come out of that in a way that great things come, I think, a lot of times when we hit our low point? So when you think about what was missing or what the business systems are, because the season's about habits and creating a vision and marching to it, like what came out of that as a learning that helped propel you? Because we know the ending, like it turned out pretty good. What happened?
Well, I had a mentor tell me, and this has served me well to this day, never waste a good crisis. So crises are an opportunity to really kind of dig deep and be reflective. And that's exactly what I did in this situation. So one of the things I determined, and this took several years of reflection, one of the things that really hurt me is that we didn't have a clear vision as a company where we were going. And so the problem is the more successful you are, the more opportunities you get. But if you don't have a vision, and if you're not clear about where you're going, it's very hard for you to discern the difference between a distraction and an opportunity, because distractions will show up at your doorstep masquerading as opportunities. And if you kind of take the bait, they'll be your undoing. And so what happened to us is we got into business for a very specific purpose. But because we didn't have a clear vision, every opportunity was a candidate. So we started doing all kinds of things. We fractured our focus. We fractured our attention. We, spread our resources too thin. And before we knew it, we were done. And that all happened because of a lack of vision. Now, fast forward to when, and you've heard this story before, but I finally went back to work at Thomas Nelson Publishers, which was a large company, seventh largest publisher in the US at the time, since acquired by HarperCollins. But at that company, I was given responsibility for one of the 14 divisions of the company. And this division just happened to be in the worst shape of all the divisions in the company. And so the good news was I couldn't screw it up, right? So it had the lowest revenue growth. In fact, this division had shrunk in the last year. It had the lowest profit margin. In fact, it had lost money the previous year. So I was initially dismayed, but then I thought, okay, I could only make it better. Yeah. So the first thing I did, Mo, was I went off site. I took the financials, I took the org chart, I took our publication schedule, all of that. And I said, I want to get clarity about where this organization, this division is going to be 3 years from now. Because the CEO had asked me the question, how long is it going to take you to turn this division around? Not having any clue. I just pulled a number out of the air and I said, I think it's going to take 36 months. And he said, well, that's kind of what I was thinking. That's probably about right. So I went off and I said, okay, what has to be true about this division in 3 years? So I just kind of imagined myself standing in the future and I started to write it in the present tense. And this was the first opportunity I ever had to create what I now call a vision script, and what I talk about in my new book, The Vision-Driven Leader, is a vision script. But I wrote down things like these. I said, our division publishes 5 New York Times bestsellers a year. So present tense as though it were reality. And at the time I was writing this, we had no bestsellers. So then I wrote in addition to that, and there were like about 10 items, but I said, our employees max out their bonus opportunities every year, because I knew if they were invested and if they were financially benefiting, that they would really drive the execution that we needed to realize this vision. And so I wrote down about 10 of these things. I came back to my team, to my kind of my inner circle, my leadership team, and I said, guys, I've been thinking about the future, and I know I don't have this perfect, but I think there's some things I'd love to see be true of this division in about 3 years, but I need your input to get it right, and I really want to tweak this. There's probably some things I've missed. So we had this incredibly robust conversation. We fine-tuned that. That became our vision script. Then we shared it with the entire team. It was so inspiring. Why? Because this team was used to losing, and nobody likes to lose. So all of a sudden, I was defining the win with this vision script. Everybody got super pumped, and we started working. Certainly, we faced our challenges. There were obstacles. But instead of us taking 36 months, that division went to number 1 in revenue growth, in profit margin, in just 18 months. So half the time I told the CEO, and it remained that way for a decade until I left the company in 2011 when we sold it to HarperCollins.
Man, I'm thinking with empathy to all of our clients, big high-end professionals, top lawyers that are a practice leader, a geographic leader, a team leader, consultants, lawyers. And then I'm also thinking of like account managers and client executives at big outsourcers and healthcare companies and things like that, and entrepreneurs, business owners too. And so often people come through our training and think, oh man, I want to do business development later or better. I love your system, but I'm really busy. How do I make time to do all these things? And the 3 pieces of content we're going to talk today: how to craft a great vision, how to tie that to action, and how to say no. I loved your, what did you say about opportunities and distractions?
Yeah, distractions show up at your doorstep masquerading as opportunities.
Oh, I love that. I want to just tape it to my wall. But as we talk about those 3 things, creating these business systems around you can free up time to do what you really need, which is focus on revenue growth and business development. In an expert-driven world, the team leader needs to play a big role in that. So we started getting into that first piece of content around vision script, which I absolutely loved from Business Accelerator. I love from Vision Driven Leader, and I've learned a lot. So when you think about a team leader in a law firm, a practice leader in a consulting firm, maybe somebody's just a client executive at a big healthcare company, but they lead a big team of people that are supporting a big national accounts client. What tips would you give people to write a really, really great vision script and just like you did, enroll their team into crafting it, building it, being super excited about it?
Yeah, well, let me just say at the beginning that if you're a leader, wherever you are in the organization, whether you're the CEO all the way down to a department leader, if you're a leader, it presupposes that you're leading people somewhere. I mean, this is kind of obvious, but it presupposes that you have clarity about the destination. You're not just going for a walk, right? So you got to have clarity or vision. So the problem is that most of us have never been taught how to do this. We think that, somebody like Martin Luther King Jr., yeah, he's a visionary. Steve Jobs, an iconic visionary. All these people must have had a special gene, special gifting. Maybe it was the way they were raised. They got charisma. I don't have that. How am I going to do it? So I want to define what a vision script is. So this is pretty simple, but here's how I define it. First of all, it's basically a written document. It's going to be 3 to 5 pages in length. Okay. So this is not a vision statement. So we hear a lot of talk about vision statement, like it's going to be some clever, short, pithy slogan that you can put on a coffee mug or slap on a t-shirt. No, even if you could do that, even if you were that smart, and honestly, not very many of us are that smart, even if you could do that, it's not going to be robust enough to inform and drive operational execution. You got to have something more than that. It's also going to outline a clear, inspiring, practical, attractive picture of your organization's future. And it's going to be basically reality as you see it 3 to 5 years from now, written in the present tense. So again, a 3 to 5 page document, that's a key thing. And it's going to be divided, and I talk about this in the book, into 4 sections. And once you understand the construction of this and how to do it, I wouldn't say it writes itself, but there's lots of prompts in the book that'll ask you the right questions so that you can write it yourself. And again, I don't care if you're at the bottom of the organization or the top, for the people that you're leading, they got to know where you're going. So I built it around 4 different aspects. First of all, what does your team look like 3 to 5 years from now? Why is that important? Because the team is the primary means by which you achieve the vision. You got to do it through people. And if your dream doesn't require a team, your dream's not big enough. So what kind of culture are you going to create? What kind of people are you going to attract? How are you going to retain them? What's it like to work inside your organization? That's all the team part of the vision script. Then the product. Now, you may not work in product development or engineering or something, where you're developing a product. It's probably a service. It could be a service. Mm-hmm. Even inside an organization where you have intra-company clients, like let's say you're running a marketing organization inside a bigger organization, there's a work product or there's a service you're providing. What does that look like 3 to 5 years from now? And then there's the marketing or the sales. How do you get the word out? How do you connect with your customers, even if they're internal customers? What does that look like 3 to 5 years from now? And then my favorite part, the 4th part, but it's the result of the other 3, is impact. What kind of impact are you having on your customers and on the world? And this can be defined by any kind of objective criteria or metrics that you want, but what are the observable, objective traits that are part of your vision? So that's how I define a vision script, and that's how you create it.
Well, I love it. And of course, you didn't see me over the weekend reading Vision Driven Leader, but I was laughing out loud because our audience, at least the folks that have read Snowball System or gone through our Grow Big training, they know something called the Herman Brain Dominance Instrument. And it breaks down how we all think using the physiological structure of the brain, ton of science, Nobel Prize winning researchers, all kinds of stuff. And your 4 areas perfectly fit in the 4 ways people think. So I'll leave that as an Easter egg to our audience that already knows HBDI, because they'll be able to line those 4, but they're going to love it because basically what you've created is a whole brain description of this future vision. And it's awesome.
Oh, that's awesome.
So that's super cool. So let's do this. Let me just say this. What I was inspired when I went through Business Accelerator was we actually had a vision for Bundle Idea Group, but it wasn't clear enough. And that was something I really took away, not only from Business Accelerator, but Vision Driven Leader, was you had criteria, sort of check marks to say, is your vision script good enough? Or does it have these things? And as we went through that with your team, we realized we need more clarity. So for lack of a better way of saying it, we sort of had like a 1-page version, but we needed a 5-page version. So we had this thing like, here's where we want to be in 10 years. But as I look back at it now, it felt like an insurmountable cliff. So what we added was the details of how we're going to get there using those 4 areas. And it just changed everything to do it sort of okay to doing it great. And it took your guidance to get there. So
wow.
So I could see our clients using this, and it's very rarely done in professional services for a team or a practice area or a big client team. So having this vision is important. I'd like to move to our second area. Okay. How do you actually execute on it? So once you get everybody's buy-in, once everybody gets their fingerprints on building that vision, they're excited about it, they're inspired, how do you actually pull that down into annual, quarterly, monthly, weekly, daily goals and execute on it?
That's a great question, and that's one of the benefits of having a vision script. Let me just say this. You've got to create alignment in your organization around that vision script to start with. So this is not something as a leader you can outsource or delegate. So I tell a funny story in the book about that, about somebody appointing me to head a committee to come up with vision for the corporation. Doesn't work. So you got to do this yourself. You got to schedule some time and go out and get a rough draft. Bring that back to your inner circle, whatever that may look like, but the leaders within your domain. And just share them with that, as I was sharing earlier, just kind of as wet cement. Make sure that they've got buy-in, there's ownership, and then cascade it down to the next level, and then cascade it down to the next level, and then finally roll it out to the entire organization. So, assuming you have that, here's how you connect the dots.
Let me jump in just for a second, because there's a real tactical thing. One thing that we teach in our Grow Big Leader training is that when you bring the draft to your team, actually calling it 60% right, putting a number on it, say, hey, this is 60% right. And then a specific word, I need your help, with the emphasis on need. I need your help finishing this. Because a lot of times when something comes down from above, people can assume, well, my boss doesn't really want feedback.
Exactly.
So you have to actually sort of go over the top to say you need it. And then some science called the IKEA effect, or that we buy into what we help create. As people finish that last 40%, that's when I saw it in your book in spades, that's when they get really excited about it, I think.
They do. And it really takes the burden off you as a leader, because if you can just get it 60% right, that's good enough. Yeah. That's why you have a team, right? Yeah. And in fact, you probably don't want it better than that, because you need their buy-in.
Exactly. If it's too good, then they don't feel like they can perfect it. So that actually saves a lot of time and gets higher buy-in. I love it.
Okay. So now, how do you derive the execution part of it? So here's how I look at it. Once you have a vision script, it becomes the first thing you check in with at your annual planning meeting. So some people call it strategic planning, some people call it annual planning. They're really 2 different things. But let's just say you have an annual meeting where you're thinking about the future. And this is where you got to come up with the annual plan, because somebody's counting on you to ultimately deliver a budget, right? So that's going to be a process. So here's the way we look at it. We take that vision script and we review it. You've got to have a cadence of review inside of your organization. This isn't a one and done thing. And because my friend Andy Stanley says vision leaks, you've got to constantly be refilling the tank. and constantly got to be repeating the vision. As the leader, you are the voice of the vision. If you don't speak it into existence, it will evaporate and go away, and nobody will have it as an operational or a present document that's informing their decisions. So you review this at that annual meeting. It's not the only time, but it's the first part of that meeting. Then the second thing is you're coming up with goals, and maybe go through SWOT analysis, identify your strategic priorities, whatever your process looks like. And I've seen a lot of processes that are amazing. But when you come up with your annual goals, the question you want to ask yourself, what are the 7 to 10 things, and that's the right number based on the goal achievement research that I've done, 7 to 10 goals that will move us toward that vision that's 3 to 5 years from now. Once you get those goals, then you want to identify when those are deliverable. And the worst thing you can do is have them all deliverable on 12/31, pick your year, right? Because that's just a recipe for procrastination. So you want to spread them out evenly as possible so that you have 2 to 3 goals per quarter. Again, these are top level goals for your organization. Different groups within your organization will have their own set of goals that tie up into that, but 2 to 3 for your organization. Then that can inform, your quarterly goals can then inform your weekly priorities. So I never set my weekly priorities, and I always set my big 3 for the week. What are the 3 most important things that I can do for this week? And so I first look at my quarterly goals. Is there anything I can do this week that'll move me in the direction of ticking off that goal for the quarter? If I've got all that I can do and I still have room, then it's got to be an important project. It doesn't have to be a goal, but it has to be important. Then daily, I'm looking for my daily big 3. What are the 3 important projects that I got to knock out today if I'm going to make progress towards my weekly priorities, my quarterly goals, my annual goals, and my vision? And again, those 3 goals are informed, or those 3 daily activities or tasks are informed by my goals and what's important. So that's kind of how I link it all together.
Oh, it's perfect. In our audience, the folks that read Snowball and System and gone through the training, they already know of a concept called MIT's, most important things. And that's where we take 15 minutes a week and think of for bringing in business, for focusing on business development, what are the 3 big things we're going to do next week, our most important things, so that we're successful. And we have criteria, BIG. Does it have a big impact? Is it for B? I, is it in our control? So writing it so it's 100% in our control. Don't have lunch with Sue, ask for lunch with Sue. And then G, is it growth oriented? Because it's so easy for people to slip into only thinking about delivery and not the growth.
Love that.
What I learned from Business Accelerator, and I love what you just walked through, is we had never thought about only having 3 big priorities, build the business priorities, stuff we were focused on internally, internal projects that'll help us immensely, limiting ourselves to 3 per quarter. And that's something I got out of Business Accelerator. We were doing far too much. So by only allowing ourselves and going through the discussion of picking 3 things per quarter we were going to focus on, we are doing those so much better and have so much more focus than we ever did before.
Yeah.
So I say all that to say our audience is going to know the MIT concept. You can take that same idea and apply it to how you're growing your team so that you're freeing up resources to be able to, so you can focus more on business development.
Well, it's exactly right. And that's where a vision is so important, because not only does it help you to identify what you're going to focus on, it enables you to exclude or remove what you're not going to focus on. And that's the key to rapid execution. When you have clarity about a vision, your momentum toward that vision is going to be accelerated if you use it as a filter. So in other words, what doesn't, the opportunities that come to your doorstep, and you say, does that fit inside the scope of our vision? Now, you've always got a choice. You could revise the vision if you want, but honestly, I don't think the vision should be revised that often. Unlike strategy, by the way. Strategy answers the question, how? How do I get from where we are to where we want to go? And honestly, that can be revised as often as necessary in order to get to the top of the mountain. But a strategy, the vision should remain fairly constant, right? So as opportunities are presented to you, you say, okay, does this lead us in the direction of our vision, or does it fall outside the scope of the vision? If it falls outside the scope, then it's an easy no. You say that's for somebody, but it's not for us.
I love it. Well, I think it's a good time to bring up 2 resources that people can use. Both these are fantastic. One's for our organization, one's from you. I work with Chad so that if folks go to businessaccelerator.com/big, for Bundle Idea Group, BIG, they can actually take an assessment that will show that you've devised yourself, that will show them how far along they are on the spectrum of managing using these principles you're using. And they'll get an actually output of that, right? That's right.
They'll actually get a score, which it's important to benchmark that, where your organization is. And we call it the business health assessment, but it basically assesses the health of your organization across 7 different domains and gives you a diagnostic to use on where you need to focus, what you need to fix, where you're going to get the most leverage by applying your resources.
Well, I loved it when I took it. And very soon after, I realized I actually needed Business Accelerator more than I thought. So
mission accomplished.
Put that out there. But it was so helpful because, looking at those 7 dimensions, and I just love how it's plotted when you actually get the results, and then some training that comes around it that you deliver via email. It's absolutely fantastic. And because you get a score based on your own, what your inputs are, you really can't argue with it. And it really shows you there were some areas that we were doing quite well at, but there are other areas we weren't. And I think of our client base and how, like you said before, this stuff just isn't taught to people, but you can learn it. And the first part is getting that assessment.
That's right. I think all progress begins when we have an honest assessment of where we are now. It's hard to move beyond where you are until you get really honest with where you are. And then once you do that, you can identify, okay, great. I mean, it's just like going to the doctor. I get a full physical every year, all kinds of blood work and everything. And the reason I do that is because I don't want to wake up one day realizing that there was something that could have been easily fixed if I had just recognized it and acknowledged it early in the process. And the business health assessment is the same way. It's designed to give you early warning system on what needs to be addressed now so that you can become or remain a healthy organization.
Yeah, I love that early warning system. It gives you the facts. Well, the other resource that we want to offer everybody listening or watching is if they go to bdhabits.com, B for business, D for development, bdhabits.com, then they'll get a free training course from us on how to have the right habits to focus on growth and to learn the skill of business development. So let's go to our third big piece of content, because at this point, we understand a vision script, and you gave really, really great insights on how to develop that. We understand how to incorporate into our management processes that we've got ongoing. And now the holy grail at the end, because I know our audience is thinking this, how do I make time to do this stuff? I want to do it. And it is so darn hard to say no to things. But I've learned so much through Business Accelerator around automate, eliminate, delegate, how to say no to things that aren't on the path to get to that vision and those kind of things. I want you to share with our audience, how do you do that? Because you've got some amazing methods to do it.
Well, let me just give you the thing I think is the most important, and this is going to be totally counterintuitive. And some of you, when you hear me say this, are going to go, there's no way I can do that. And that's to establish hard boundaries around your work. And you're saying, well, maybe you weren't listening, Michael. I can't get it all done now. I need more time, not less time. No, you actually need less time. Because here's what happens when you put hard boundaries around your work. So for me, I start work at 9 in the morning and I finish, and I've done this for now almost 20 years, at 6 p.m. I don't take work into the evening, and I don't work on the weekends. Guess what happens? It forces me to prioritize. In the old days before I did that, here's how my day looked. If I didn't get all done, I said, it's not that big a deal. I'll just take it home, have dinner with the family, pull out my laptop, and I'll just keep working. Or if I don't get it done by Friday, I'll just work some Saturday morning, which would turn into middle of Saturday afternoon, which would turn into Sunday afternoon after church. And, I was just basically working all the time. Work was non-stop. That's not necessary. That's only necessary if you don't have a vision. So if you don't know what's important, if you don't know what contributes to the vision, then suddenly everything's kind of important because you're just in reactive mode. The boss said it was important. My customer or client said it was important. So I guess I got to focus on it. Once you have clarity around your vision, you're able to create boundaries, and it forces you to choose what's most important. Think of it this way. Our average client, when they come into our program, has on average 15 tasks per day that they need to get done. They look at that list, 15 tasks, and they think to themselves when they wake up in the morning, they're overwhelmed. There's no way. I'm going to get those 15 things done today. They go to bed, even if they get 8 of those 15 done, more than half, they go to bed defeated because they didn't finish their task list. This is no way to live. You're playing a losing game, and it's time to blow up the game and completely reinvent it. Now, if the Pareto principle is true, right, that 20% of our activity drives 80% of the results, 20% of 15 is 3. What are the 3 actions that are going to drive, and I loved your big acronym, what are going to drive the biggest results? What are those 3 things? And if I got those 3 things done today, I'm going to declare victory. I'm going to define the win before the day starts. And I'm going to say no to everything else. It can go in the queue for later, but I'm going to say no to everything else. Now, here's the crazy thing about it. Just to show you how this plays out in one man's life, my business for the last 3 years has grown about 60% on average per year. We've been in the Inc. 5000 list of the fastest growing private companies each of the last 3 years. But here's what's, big deal. But here's what's a little bit surprising. Last year, I took 162 days off. Okay, that includes every weekend and 11 weeks of vacation. A lot of people think that they got to work more to get more. And in my book, Free to Focus, and I know you've read this, but the subtitle of that book is How to Achieve More by Doing Less. It's not what you do, it's doing the right things. And that all comes from a vision. And that vision gives you the courage to say no to the trivial, to the urgent, to the unimportant, to the things that clamor for your time, but don't add that much value as defined by your vision. Does that make sense, Mo?
Oh man, it makes so much sense. So it made me think of a client we were working with in January, a big healthcare company where we trained their top 150 leaders across the nation. And it was funny because we were talking about from a business development or growth perspective, sort of the analog to what you're talking about in running a business. Your scope is much broader than ours, but it's a lot of the same kind of concepts. But we were halfway through that session, day and a half long session, and people said, but how do I say no? But you don't understand. I get all these requests come in, and let me show you my phone. I get this many emails a day, and people are going crazy over it. So what we ended up adding into the session was how do you actually say no to this stuff? And I want to get your view on it because you've got so many great methods. You've got templates that you respond to an email request, so you've automated things. You've created systems around you with Jim and others that block your calendar and keep certain things sacred. You go a little deeper in how you create sort of a moat around you so the unimportant doesn't come in, or if it does, how you've created mechanisms to respond very quickly with grace and with helpfulness, but in ways that if somebody asks you for, spend an hour with a cup of coffee, that's not one of your priorities. You've got to wait still to help them in 30 seconds, but a whole hour didn't go by. So go a hair deeper in those kind of things.
Okay, so my heart is to serve. I want to serve my best clients. I want them to be a priority, and those are my Business Accelerator clients. The only way I can do that is I have to say no to the lesser opportunities. So a couple of tools. First of all, I create an ideal week. So this is my week. If I had 100% control of it, how could I develop it so that it made the most efficient use of my time, so that I'm not jumping in and out of different kinds of headspace, so I don't have a meeting 1 minute, and then I'm trying to create something another minute, then I'm trying to lead a team meeting. How do I consolidate that? So for me, it looks like, and just to illustrate, I go into this in depth and Free to Focus, but like all my internal meetings are on Monday, all my external meetings are on Friday. And so I think of my 3 middle days of the week. I have front stage time and I have backstage time to prepare and time to deliver. So I organize that in what's the way that really sets me up to win. What's my morning ritual going to look like? What's my workday startup ritual going to look like? And how can I set up the day to win and optimize that time? Then every request that comes in, I try to shoehorn into that ideal week. Now, here's the deal. I'm never going to make it ideal. We don't live in an ideal world, right? So if I can get it 85% of the way there on any given week, I feel pretty good. But it's better than no structure, because if you don't have an ideal week, then you're basically left to all the requests, and all this stuff just gets littered on your calendar. There's no rhyme or reason. It doesn't have an intelligence or a design to it, and it's exhausting. So an ideal week will get that back for you. Then when I get
And I'll add one more thing that and I'm going to poke at you a little bit because I think you're so unconsciously competent in this that you don't see something you do really well. But one thing I learned in Free to Focus and Business Accelerator was to automate things that we routinely get. And,
yes.
and our clients need that too. So think if you're a senior partner in a law firm, well, you get requests all the time from associates and partners asking for your time to help them with X, Y, or Z. You know, career development. Do you
yes.
like do you like being a lawyer to help me do X, Y, or Z? Well, a certain amount of that you got to do for the good of the firm and things like that. This is just one example. But documenting what is your philosophy, what are links and resources you could send out, and being able to quickly respond to, say you get 10 of those a week, to be able to respond to those 10 and go, gosh, I because of this vision I've got, I can't spend the hour you asked for at lunch, but let me give you this. And you'd give a whole list of resources. You've got all this stuff automated yourself. And then read that and then come back to me and maybe we can spend 15 minutes on the phone, but you can ask specific questions about my philosophy. Well, that is a simple example, but you've got systems like that around you everywhere because you get bombarded far more than our clients do because you're out in the public space so much, but you've got ways you can still help people, but it doesn't drag you down on being effective. I think you're really, really good at that. I've never seen anybody better.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Well, I'll tell you where it began is I realized that I was getting repeated requests. Like people had asked me, could I serve on a board? Would I serve on this committee? Could I come speak at this thing? Would I be willing to spend 30 minutes with them talking through whatever? And I said, these kind of keep repeating. And I noticed that when I respond to them, sometimes, I'm feeling generous and I write them a thorough response. Sometimes I'm a little irritated that I got the response and I might shoot off something short and a little bit snarky and not my best self. Sometimes I would just let them languish in my inbox because I didn't have time to answer them. And I said, there's got to be a better system. So I identified there were basically 42 different requests. And I didn't make like this a giant project. I said, the next time I respond to one of these that I've identified as a recurring request, I'm going to respond in the most gracious, thoughtful, complete way that I can. And I'm going to save it as a template. Once I worked through all 42 of these, I had a bank of templates that made me responding to these requests so fast and so consistently, so that it was always generous. It was always thoughtful. It was always comprehensive. And so one way to do that, there's a ton of tech tools, and I don't want to get too far in the weeds, but at the very least, you could save these as an email signature in your email program. So we're all familiar with that. We use it to, so we don't have to keep putting our phone number in there or our address, but you could also use it for entire bodies of text. So when I got a request, for example, somebody said, hey, can I pick your brain? So I've named that as a signature, pick your brain, and I just, boom, I respond with that. I personalize it by putting an initial paragraph, hey, Joe, so great to hear from you. Then there's the boilerplate text, and then I warm it up at the end. In 2 seconds, I send it off. They get an instant response. And Mo, I've got to share this. So here's how I say no. I use this formula that I learned from William Ury, who wrote a book called The Power of No. And the formula is yes, no, yes. Okay, so first I'm going to affirm them. So one of the requests I get, having been in the book publishing industry, is would you review my book proposal? So here's what I say. Hey, congratulations on writing a book proposal. You've done what 95% of the people who want to be an author have never done. Good for you. Okay, so that's the yes. Now I want to say the no. Okay, so now I want to give them a very definitive, unequivocal no. Here's what I don't want to say. Hey, you've caught me at a busy time. Maybe you could check back in a month or two and I'll see if I can do it. That's what I call the boomerang response. That's going to come back and hit you in the head about 2 months from now. So instead, what you want to say is, unfortunately, due to my other commitments, I'm going to have to say no. So you've let them know a couple things. You take commitments seriously. You're a person who honors their commitments. And in order to be faithful to those other commitments, you're going to have to say no to this person. So you don't have to explain what else is on your plate. You don't have to give any other excuses. People understand commitments. Then you want to end with a yes. And this is where, if possible, you can point them to a resource. Now, you might have to think about this a little bit. For me, it was pretty easy because I've got a gazillion blog posts, I've got podcasts, I've got courses, I can point them to something else. But if you can think of something, you might have to resource this or have your assistant research it or just think about it, but come up with a resource. Even if you can't come up with anything, just affirm them. Say, again, congratulations on getting that book proposal, written. I can't wait to read the book, whatever, God bless you. And that's the end of it. So I've never had anybody complain about that kind of response. What I have had is people say this, well, I'm disappointed, but I got to tell you, I'm grateful that you got back to me so quickly. Because what people are used to is sending a message like that and then they don't hear. And then they start wondering, is he mad at me? Does he not like me? Does he think he's too busy for me? I mean, like they invent this whole story in the vacuum of information, but getting back to them quickly, they appreciate that. So most people can handle a no. What they can handle is no response.
Michael, this is gold. It's gold. And I think what's super cool is our client base is so darn busy. They're working 60, 78 hours a week. The idea of automating responses in this way is absolutely fantastic. It's changed my life because you got 42 different things that come in the door. I get 5 or 6 as I used your system from Free to Focus and Business Accelerator. I actually didn't have that many, but I'd never in my life thought about automating my responses. It just, it saves so much time. So let's do this because I know our time's close to end. That sequence of what we just talked about setting a vision, aligning it with the internal operations of a large team or part of the organization or all of an organization, how to say no or automate, eliminate, delegate things that aren't on that path is incredibly valuable. These are things not taught anywhere. And I just want to remind people those 2 really great resources. businessaccelerator.com/big will let people assess themselves on 7 dimensions that you found are the most important 7 to actually start a journey to become an amazing leader and really live the life you want. And you talk about the double win, winning at work and winning at home. And then that other resource, bdhabits.com, that's going to let folks get a free course from us on the 1 habit on how you can start to really become even better at business development. Whether you're really great or you're just starting out, it tells you what world-class rainmakers do from a habit standpoint to be successful. So amazing resources. Any thoughts on that before you give us I'm going to challenge you to give us an inspirational story to close things out.
Yeah, here's an inspirational story. If you can become a vision-driven leader, and that can really become something that's important to you, you're going to be amazed at how confident you're going to show up. Because here's the thing, people are vision starved. And particularly in the current environment, they're starved for it. Everybody is so focused with, head to the grindstone, really focused on the current challenges that they're facing, the obstacles they're facing. For somebody to inject vision into that can make all the difference. So I'll tell you, at our annual meeting that we had in January with all of our employees, at the end of it, I'd read through our vision script and I did it with enthusiasm. And I'll just say this as another pro tip. If you're not excited about your vision, go back to the drawing board because people are not going to buy what you haven't bought into. You can't sell what you haven't bought. So I bought into our vision. I was expounding upon it with enthusiasm. I had a customer service rep, frontline person, who came to us like 3 months prior to that, came up to me afterwards with tears in her eyes. Her name's Emmy. And she said, "Thank you so much for this. This is the first time I ever really connected the dots and understood that the work that I do matters." And she, like 2 different times since that time, she said that to me. I mean, she loves her job now. And honestly, customer service, client care, that kind of stuff sometimes it's not easy. But when they understand how, and to use another metaphor, that they're not just laying bricks, they're not just building a wall, but they're building a cathedral. That's the vision. If they can connect what they're doing to that, it makes all the difference in morale, in the quality of your culture, and in people's confidence in you as their leader.
Well, I could not agree more. And I think back to our clients, and I think so often it's easy to say, oh, my organization doesn't believe in X, or I wish our whole organization would do Y or whatnot. But the senior leaders we work with, maybe they don't control the entire entity at a Fortune 50 company or one of the top professional service firms in the world, but they do control their team.
That's it.
They can create a vision for their team that focuses on this little piece of their organization that they can control, and they can completely change what is now to be something that is much better, fire their teams up to do it, exceed anyone's expectation for revenue and profitability, new projects or matters or expansion or whatever, and have everybody have a blast. And it just takes doing those three things you shared with us today. Creating a compelling vision, getting people excited about it, having that embedded in your normal business operation so everybody is reminded of it all the time, and having the ability to automate or eliminate or delegate, to say no to things that are in the way so you can say yes to things that continue on that journey. People need your content more than ever, and they need their leaders to do the things that we talked about today. So thank you so much for sharing it, because this was dense. They had a ton of great content in it, and it just exceeded my even high expectations.
Oh, well, thank you for having me on. It's just a delight to be with you.